ABC. Well, here we go. I want to try and do a video about my journey through this 70s hard rock thing. Sounds kind of cheesy, I guess, say it like that, but it's just kind of true. It's what it's been. Kind of going to break this up into a couple of sections and just kind of talk about it overall. First and foremost, I am by no means an expert on this stuff. Most of this stuff is new to me, and I'm finding this as I go along with help from the internet, from friends, lots of friends in the VC especially, and just stumbling on stuff, you know, talking to people in shops, conventions, whatever. And it's been great, and it's been, you know, years in the making, I guess you could say. So, if I make any mistakes throughout this, you know, don't nail me to the wall here. Just feel free to make comments, suggestions, anything you'd like to add to this, you know, or make a video yourself, show some stuff that, you know, maybe I didn't show or I don't know about yet, or other people haven't been turned on to yet. Yeah, this is like a, you know, I've said this before in my videos, it's like music to me is a journey, man, and it's, you know, you take the road this way for a while, then you're back on the path, and you go another direction. It's just finding stuff, you know, and the older you get, the kind of cooler it is. You can dig back and connect the dots and find stuff that, you know, you might not have liked when you were younger, or, you know, stuff you were younger you like, you might not like now. It's just stuff changes. But anyways, this may be a kind of a long video. I may ramble on, so it's going to be what it's going to be. And let's just kind of get into it, I guess. I kind of want to just talk about how I got into all this, and just an overview of myself with music. Yeah, got into music through Kiss in 77, 78, somewhere right around in there. Very young, younger than 10 years old, you know, wanting Kiss albums for birthdays, Christmases, and, you know, every other Tuesday, whatever. I wanted Kiss records. From there, found AC/DC. An older neighbor played some Van Halen for me. I didn't quite get it at the time, but, like, you know, it sunk in after a little while, and then 1980 rolled along, and there was British Steel, Judas Priest. The first time I heard Priest, and that just blew my head off. Iron Maiden, and then, you know, teenager through the 80s, full-on metalhead, still am today. But, you know, like I said, I like all kinds of music. But 80s metal and, you know, hard rock is what I was built on. But went all through the 80s, you know, with the typical stuff. Doc and Rat, Metallica. Started checking out some of the underground with thrash and all that. New wave British heavy metal. Got into the late 80s, and all that stuff was kind of burning out, you know. All the MTV metal was sounding the same. Thrash was starting to sound the same. Started hearing bands coming out of Seattle. You know, a lot of people, especially metal guys, don't like grunge. I loved early grunge, you know, with the first Nirvana, Bleach, the first Mudhoney, the early Soundgarden stuff, Mother Love Bone before we had Pearl Jam. And then, you know, 92, 93 rolls along, and all that stuff starts sounding the same, and everybody wants to sound just like them. So off I went and got into kind of like an alternative country thing for a little while with Son Volt, Uncle Tupelo, just all that stuff. And then 95 hit, and I was kind of done. I was done looking for new stuff. I I started digging back. And that's when I really started, you know, hey, I like the Ramones, but wow, who's Richard Hell, and, you know, all this stuff right below the surface. Same thing with metal. Hey, I like all this metal, and I knew some of the, yeah, I peeled the layers back at the time and found some smaller bands, but then I really started peeling it back, and, you know, I wanted to find the band from Idaho that released, self-released, you know, 500 copies. And I really didn't pay attention to music, anything new, for probably, you know, 5 or 6 years, until, you know, 2000, 2001. And that, around 2000, 2001, somewhere right around in there, I met a friend, met a guy that sold stuff on eBay. I'd actually bought a Keel reissue of The Right to Rock on CD from this guy. I found out he lived close to me, went to pick it up, became like best friends, ended up kind of working for him for about 8 years or so, but never took any money as payment, always took records, CDs, just music related stuff. Still friends to this day, still get stuff from him every once in a while. But anyways, that's where I kind of started running, around that period is when I started running into some older stuff and getting more interested in it. Monster Records, that was one of the first things, and this was kind of one of the albums that kind of sparked it off. Amulet, take it out of the case, on Monster Records. Late 70s band, like 78, 79. This was actually recorded at around 1980, so we're pushing it here as far as 70s hard rock, but this is very much 70s hard rock. Check them out. I would love to find this on vinyl, but, you know, some of this stuff is so obscure, you're just lucky to find reissues, to be quite honest. So that was probably the first one. Then the next one that really kind of got me wanting to check them out was, I kept running across this band called Coven, and they had this crazy story, you know, and the album is Witchcraft Destroys Minds and Reaps Souls. Female singer, and, you know, you read about it and it says, you know, it's got like a, what is it, 10, 11 minute satanic mass on it. And this came out in '69. The first song on the album is called Black Sabbath. The bass player, I believe it was, is John Osborne. And, you know, being a fan of Sabbath, Black Sabbath, you're like, man, that's odd, you know. Did Sabbath, you know, take a little bit from these dudes or what? So I had to check this out, and this is a strange album in that 70s hard rock thing, but just the darkness, the satanic part of it, you know, that kind of drew me into it too. And oh, this is making sense, you know. It's just like that started drawing me back to, wow, these are some weird bands in the 70s I've never heard of, I need to check out. And like everything else, every genre, every era of music, you have those top tier bands, but right below them you have some bands that have a little bit of success, and below that there's just whatever, hundreds or thousands, whatever, of bands that are fighting, clawing to get up there with those first two tiers, you know. Like I said, the Ramones, I found Richard Hell, you know, and you just keep digging back, Tough Darts, you know, just crazy stuff below. And the same goes with this 70s stuff, and that's when I wanted to find the bands underneath. And the thing I really, like I said, in the mid-90s, I just kind of stopped looking for new stuff, listening to new stuff. For the most part, I would still, you know, pick up a little bit here and there, metal-wise. But a lot of that came from, as I've gotten older, I've realized I hate the digital age as far as music goes. Just with, this stuff is so much better. You know, it's so dudes with amps, guitars, drums, recording to tape. There's not a bunch of shit involved here. There's not a computer with 75,000 tracks and, you know, copy, paste, add whatever you want to it. It's not there. Here it's kind of pure and just, you know, this is what these guys sounded like. At the most, there may be some splicing on the tape or something, you know what I mean? But they're not running through a 6-foot tall guitar rack of effects and all that. They got some pedals, probably some cable, an amp, and a guitar, and that stuff's killer. So that's what kind of drew me to it, the pureness of it, and you know, it just, I hate the new sound of most bands with the whole digital thing. I'm an old fucker, whatever you want to say. It's just true. And now I can kind of respect guys, you know, that were whatever, listen to big band and they don't care about anything after that, or listen to jazz and they don't care about anything after that. Whatever, it's just part of when you grow up, I guess, but for me, that's part of it. So anyways, let's kind of, that's a long intro, and I'm sorry, but there you go. Told you it was going to be a long video. Kind of jump into it. I think we'll start out here just talking about, like I said, this is about me finding stuff, and I want to share with everybody what I've found, but also be a little informative for people that are new to this, the whole 70s hard rock, the obscure stuff, or just 70s hard rock in general. So we'll kind of start with, you know, the big bands, what the big dogs in the room, and what most of us probably watching this video know, you know, about all these bands. We'll just kind of, yeah, show a few here. So here we go. Alright, here we go. One quick thing before we get started here. I forgot to mention this. A killer book for 70s hard rock, you know, for some information, is The Collector's Guide to Heavy Metal Volume 1, the 1970s. Killer resource. Martin Popoff. I don't always agree with Popoff's reviews, but that really doesn't matter. Yeah, his reviews are usually pretty good, but he gives a lot of information too. Just it's really cool to, you know, stick one of these or pop one of these albums on, sit down and look it up. You know, you don't always have to be in front of a computer screen here or whatever. But really cool, you know, quick reviews and very informative. And he also did the 80s, 90s, the 2000s, and I'm sure there'll be one after that. The 80s one is very good too. Okay, so let's kind of jump into it. These are basically the big dogs. These are the bands, the hard rock bands, some of the hard rock bands that dominated the 70s, you know. And I'm guarantee I'm missing some. I wasn't trying to pull everything off the shelves here, talk about every band. This was just, you know, get an idea of where I'm coming from. This is, I like all these bands, and this is kind of what I'm looking for when I'm looking for the obscure stuff. I'm looking for those kind of bands that lean towards these bands, because once we get into the next segment here, talking about the obscure stuff, it gets kind of crazy. I'll kind of talk about that, yeah, the different influences on some of those bands. Okay, so let's just kind of get going. You know, it's the 60s. You know, they've already been through all the pop stuff, the British invasion, the flower power hippie stuff, and there's also some heaviness starting to come in. You know, you had Hendrix and Cream, and this band, Blue Cheer, their debut album, Vincebus Eruptum. San Francisco band. This came out in '68. You know, we're not into the 70s yet, and this is just like full-on heavy, loud, bluesy rock, you know. But like I said, it's still not that 70s hard rock yet, but it's getting there. More so than Cream. You know, Cream always gets mentioned in this, you know, that proto metal, you know, who started what and whatever. Cream's cool, heavy blues, but you know, Blue Cheer was just more bombastic and, you know, more what I was looking for. Okay, so basically the three big ones from that era to me are, let's just get this one out of the way, y'all know it's going to come up, Led Zeppelin. Probably the biggest, but still, you know, heavy blues, you know. And a lot of the bands were, and that's cool. That's kind of what, you know, I'm looking for here in this obscure 70s hard rock stuff. So I don't think we need to talk about Zeppelin too much, but we know they were basically kings of the mountain, right? And then behind them was Deep Purple. Now you're getting into amazing, well, all these guys, amazing guitar players. You know, you got Jimmy Page. I'm different when it comes to Zeppelin. I don't listen to Zeppelin for Jimmy Page. I listen to Zeppelin for John Bonham. Hands down. He's the most interesting part of this band. Amazing drummer. Still one of the best drummers ever. And, yeah, that's what I listen for. But still, we're getting into that guitar-driven, you know, good guitar players. Deep Purple, same deal. Richie Blackmore started out a couple albums in the 60s, just not for me, you know, that little bit psychedelic. And that's when we're getting into the early 70s. You still have a little bit of that psychedelic 60s left in some of these bands, and it takes some of them, not saying these bigger bands, but the smaller bands, it takes some of them till about 71, 72, we hit that sweet spot where they shake off all that 60s nonsense, for lack of a better word, and get down to some serious hard rock. Purple was kind of in there, you know, their first couple albums. You know, it wasn't Deep Purple to me. You got Deep Purple around this era, getting into the early 70s, you know, before Blackmore left. And after Blackmore left, I like the stuff, you know, after him too, in the 70s. But anyways, what's cool here, John Lord playing that big Hammond B3, and that's a really cool addition to a lot of the 70s hard rock. And some of the newer bands, I'm going to talk about a few newer bands at the very end of this, you know, got the Hammond B3 rolling. And then really the ones that, you know, went on to really help define metal in leading into the 80s and all that, Black Sabbath. I mean, you know, to me they are the fathers of metal. All these other bands influenced and definitely had a part of it, of shaping what would be metal. But these guys, man, this is metal, man. It started out as metal. Hard rock, yes, but these guys right out the gate in, what, 1970? Metal. Fantastic album. Another killer guitar player. So there's kind of the three big dogs, the way I look at it. But you had all these other bands that were huge in the same era. Like, for me, of course, Kiss. Say what you want about them, the image and all that bullshit, still good 70s hard rock. It doesn't matter. And they were still, yeah, they were writing a little bit on the commercial side, a little more so than Sabbath or, you know, whoever. But get rid of the makeup, get rid of the image, just listen to the record, and it's just good 70s hard rock, especially these early ones. You know, it's a fantastic album. And then, you know, yeah, Uriah Heep. Just amazing 70s hard rock. They maybe didn't get to the... They were big. They didn't get to that Led Zeppelin size or anything. Still a very big band in the 70s. And of course, Aerosmith. that bluesy hard rock. Their best era to me. 70s Aerosmith, hands down, the best. I like the 80s stuff when they first got back together, and then late 80s on, it's all one sound to me. Every record sounds identical. Every song sounds identical. No offense, I know there's some huge Aerosmith fans, Scott, but I love the early stuff. Love the 80s, early 80s, mid 80s stuff, and that's it for me. But another important 70s hard rock band. You say the same thing with Blue Oyster Cult. You know, now we're getting a little smaller. You know, they definitely had hits, and they were very well known, but we're getting a little down the food chain. And kind of the last one I pulled out, Thin Lizzy. And this album especially, man, I mean, listen to this album, and the guitar on this album is so in your face, and just perfect guitar amp, not a bunch of bullshit. Yeah, it might have a couple little effects pedals. It's just pure, man. It sounds so good, and this is kind of, you know, what I'm looking for. Now, also in the 70s, and this is kind of where it gets into newer people to this. If you dig 80s metal or whatever, let's not forget there was bands working in the 70s, getting started, that wouldn't really hit it until the 80s. They had success, and they were, you know, on that, definitely down the ladder, and they were known, but most of these bands would explode in the 80s. So, and perfect example is Judas Priest. I mean, what is this, 74? Their first album, Rock-a-Rolla. 70s hard rock. Every album got a little heavier, a little more epic, some of the songs. But they were right there in the 70s. You know, as a kid, I didn't know this. I mean, it was 1980 when I heard British Steel, and went on from there, and then kind of maybe a few years later went back and checked out, you know, Sad Wings and that kind of thing, Stained Class. But I mean, you drop the needle on this. This is 70s hard rock, and it's fantastic. You know, it's overlooked for the most part. Another band became mega in the 80s, Scorpions. This is their live album, Tokyo Tapes. And this is 78, I'm sorry. So I can't think off the top of my head, probably 4 albums before this. Ole John Roth on guitar, and then you had Michael Schenker on guitar early on. The connection there, you know, it's and 70s hard rock. They get into the 80s, and they get more of an 80s metal thing going, and then by the late 80s, same kind of deal. They almost get a bit of an Aerosmith thing going, where they have a, what's the word I'm looking for, formula. Gets too much of a formula to them, you know. But I saw these guys 4 years ago or so at an M3 Fest, and they just blew the roof off the place. Fantastic. These guys are what, all in their 60s, I'm guessing, and just smoke. Still a fantastic band. 70s hard rock. I mean, when you think of 70s hard rock, you think of the Scorpions. And there you go, UFO. We're going to the 80s and that still have success, but, you know, their 70s stuff is where it's at. Michael Schenker again. Yeah, love Scorpions, went to UFO. Just Rock Bottom, Doctor, just amazing songs. And another killer 70s, Elf. This is Carolina Country Ball, but this is the U.S. pressing. It's called LA 59. This is their second album. Ronnie James Dio. You know? I mean, how much... This is early 70s, and basically Elf would open up for Deep Purple. Richie Blackmore would leave Deep Purple, start Rainbow, and basically take the majority of the Elf members and start Rainbow with Dio. Yeah. Also in Elf early on, you had Rock Feinstein, who would go on into the like 1980, 79, 80, start the Rods, killer 80s hard rock metal band. But Rainbow, you know, I mean, yes, they're completely respected today and everything, but how, you know, they weren't mega stars in the 70s like a Zeppelin or somebody like that. And then you get into the late 70s and you got Motorhead, you know, would help define 80s metal. And those last ones just kind of, like I said, those bands were active in the 70s and they pushed into the 80s and helped define all that 80s metal. You know, they would go on to be a part of that scene. Okay, so there you go. That's kind of the big ones, and what I was kind of trying to get at is this is kind of what I'm looking for, that sound of some of those big bands, but I want to hear some of these smaller bands, these more obscure bands. And it gets crazy once you get down into these small bands because you hear all kind of different terms. You hear 70s hard rock, and then you hear heavy psych, heavy blues. It's just nuts, and every band kind of had a different sound, but was still heavy. But like I said, the further away you got from like 1970, you started getting rid of that that 60s psychedelic sound. And then you had heavy prog that was kind of thrown in there with it, and it just gets nuts. But anyways, I'm going to show what I've found, and I'm rambling here, I know. I'm going to show what I've come across, you know, throughout the years looking for this stuff, and hopefully, you know, turns people on to some bands they hadn't heard or something like that. Okay, now we're to the meat of this video, what the whole video is kind of meant for. Obscure 70s hard rock. Whatever kind of gets lumped in there with it. Heavy psych, heavy blues, heavy prog, whatever you want to call it. That early 70s up to like 74 or so is where you get the heavy psych and prog and all of that. Once you get like 75 and kind of on, you start getting more, the bands are getting more focused. You get some of those bands later in are just full on hard rock, and we're leading into the 80s, you know, with the heavier hard rock, metal, whatever you want to say. I will say, if you jump into this and check out some of these bands and start exploring on your own, when you see these reissues, and there's all kind of reissues floating around, you read blurbs on the album covers, the stickers, or, you know, the write-ups for the albums that you find online. They always mention Black Sabbath, or Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, one of those three, if not all three. And it's not always true. You might pick up an album and on the sticker it mentions, you know, sounds like Black Sabbath. You're not guaranteed it's going to. So make sure you do your homework, really check these bands out before you go, you know, buy something or whatever. And I suggest anything I show here, please, you know, jump online, check it out, leave some comments. Yeah, if you like one of them, leave a comment. Don't like one of them, leave a comment, whatever. So, all right, enough talking. Let's jump into it. I just dropped the needle on Cactus here behind me. 1970 Atco. The drummer is Carmine Appice, yeah. From Vanilla Fudge, big drummer at the time, played with everybody, went on with Rod Stewart, all kind of people. Kingdom Come in the 80s, metal, hair metal. But debut album, fantastic, heavy blues, you know, it gets compared to Led Zeppelin a lot. And like, you know, Cactus is one of those bands, definitely if you've even dipped your toe into this, you've heard of them, come across them. And there's some of those in here. And there's also the more crazy obscure, but, you know, Cactus is still pretty obscure, you know, I believe. But they definitely, you know, bands like them, Captain Beyond, they've definitely got a cult following now, which is great. Alright, let's kind of jump into it. First off, the three that basically really pushed me into this, checking out more of this kind of stuff. First one, Lucifer's Friend. Killer band. And by the way, I've made some notes, so I might have to look down every once in a while. This was 1970, originally came out on Vertigo. And this isn't a Vertigo, this is a US pressing on, I can't remember now, and I'm not going to take it out. It's not on, there's nothing on the back of information. But, killer band. They actually had a lot of releases in the 70s, and they were one of those bands that changed a good bit in between each album. There's some good stuff scattered throughout their catalog, but this debut, hands down, this is a killer 70s hard rock, and early, you know, 1970s, has a little proggy element to it. Alright, the next album that pushed me down this road of 70s hard rock, found this at a record convention. Saw the cover, knew nothing about this band, but it reminded me of the Elf album, Trying to Burn the Sun, Granicus. 1973, they were from Cleveland, one album, this is it. And this is unbelievable. Like I said in the video, I think last video, why this band didn't get bigger is just beyond me. They opened up for some bigger bands I've read at the time, and you know, it just didn't take off. But just an amazing band, amazing album. Please, if you're halfway interested in any of this stuff, check this album out. And it's a reissue. It can be found out there relatively cheap. And the third album was at a shop. The guy that runs the shop is into this kind of stuff, and I just got talking to him about the Granicus album, and he said, well, have you tried out this other band? Check them out. And another cheap reissue, $12, $13, Highway Robbery. Name of the album is For Love or Money. And check, 1972, another US band. Come out on RCA. I believe there was a band either before or right after this band called Atlee, which had a couple members, just 3-piece, that I'd like to track down. I haven't been able to yet. But just great hard rock, straight up, you know. Like I said, 1972, and these guys are just pumping it out. Next, I was listening to this earlier at the beginning of this video. Just got it not long ago, finally cracked it open. It's Ashcan, In From the Cold. And this is earlier, 1969 UK band. And it had Bob Weston, who was connected with Fleetwood Mac, was in this band. And like I said, just got it. I was playing it earlier. Definitely like a heavy blues element to it. It's early, it's 69, but very good. Another killer reissue. Okay, next up, Amish. It's a Canadian band, and this was 72, yeah, 1972. This freaking is rocking, man. This blew me away when I found it. Like I said, reissue. Hammond organ in here, very cool. Little touches of prog, heavy, very good. Next, Aunt Mary, Janice. Love this cover. This is in a Karma pressing reissue. This was 1973, and they were Norwegian. This album originally came out on Vertigo, and that's something maybe talk about, that early Vertigo stuff, man. Black Sabbath. You know, there's some amazing hard rock stuff. You'll come across a lot of these old reissues were originally released on Vertigo. So this is definitely like a heavy prog kind of thing. Very good. Here's a little later one. This is 1978. Axis. I believe self-titled Circus World. It's a Circus World by Axis. And this is a 3-piece. And like I said, 1978 U.S. band, and it featured Vinny Appice, Carmine Appice's brother, was the drummer on this band. And of course, he'd go on to be the drummer with Black Sabbath and then Dio and Heaven and Hell. This is later on, 78, just straight up good hard rock. We're getting into the close to the 80s now when that one come out. Okay, here's another one like Cactus. Legendary, obscure 70s hard rock. You'll definitely, if you type in, you know, obscure 70s hard rock, this is going to pop up. Bang. Another U.S. band. This was 72, 71, sorry. And these guys will get talked about, they call them the American Black Sabbath. True to an extent. They definitely kind of have a little bit of a Sabbath sound. Not as thick sounding as Sabbath, but straight up killer album, and it's worth all the lip service it gets. This was their official debut. They actually had recorded an album before this called Death of a Country that didn't get released till years later, and it's more a heavy psych album, but actually good. I ended up liking it too. I wasn't sure if I would, but I did. And then their second album, Bang, Mother, Bow to the King. Again, another good, not as good as the debut, but still a good hard rocking album. There's some, if I remember correctly, it's been a while, a little bit of quieter things on here, a little more acoustic-y moments, but good album. One I just picked up not long ago, finally, is Bedlam. This is 1973. And this featured Cozy Powell, who drummer, you know, who's going to be with White Snake and Rainbow, even Sabbath at a point. But just good, pretty much straight hard rock. Very cool album. I've been looking for this for a while, waiting for one to pop up. Yeah, I didn't want to order one off eBay and pay crazy prices. All right, here's an interesting one. I got turned on to this by Aaron. Metal Theo. Birth Control Operation is the name of the album. What we got? 1971. And this is kind of heavy prog, organ stuff going on. Very cool album, but it definitely has that proggy side to it. But thanks, Aaron. Definitely happy you turned me on to that. Next, got this not too long ago also. This is Boulder Dam Morning. It's 1971, and they were from Florida. And it's pretty much just a heavy hard rock album. It's kind of got like a fuzz sound guitar to it. But very cool. Like I say, this is newer and a reissue, like most of these. Originals of this stuff is so hard to find. Like the Bang was an original. It's happier than hell to find that. Next up, Cargo. This is really cool. I really dig this album. This is 1972. They were a Dutch band. Kind of heavy prog, like kind of jammy at times, long songs. Like I think there was the original album was 4 songs, but this was expanded to a 2 LP set, and they added 4 more. So it's basically 2 songs per side. They originally started out as a band, or they were a band called September, which I've never heard. But I guess they had a little bit of success there in their home country, and were recording this stuff and ended up not using the September name. They went by Cargo. So I don't know if they carried on as September after this album, but I think this was their only album. Alright, next up, another Vertigo reissue. This is Clear Blue Sky. This is 1970. They were a UK band. Heavy prog again, more fuzz. You know, we're still in that early years, 1970, 71, 72. Like I said, you know, you still either had the psychedelic thing kind of go on, or, you know, prog was kind of coming in, get more experimental. But definitely a cool album. And this is an Karma reissue. Karma for this stuff is one of the best labels I've come across. Yeah, and like I said, I'm just getting started at this. Next up is Armageddon. So we're getting a little later here, 1975. And these guys were from England. And this is one you'll see around. I used to see this a good bit. Finally picked it up, you know, once I started getting into this stuff, and totally dig it. It's just kind of straight hard rock, or getting closer to straight hard rock. Keith Relf from the Yardbirds is the vocalist on this album. It's a little overproduced, kind of, at times. It's a little, I don't know, a little thick on the effects and that kind of thing, but still a good album. Right, next, Baker Gervit's Army. And here's another one you'll see around, or I see around a good bit. And this is smoking, man. Ginger Baker and Adrian and Paul Gervitz, the brothers from Three Man Army, and they were also in Gun. Adrian Gervitz, man, killer guitar player. And he just smokes on here. And then, of course, you got Ginger Baker just all over the place on this thing. And I guess he was kind of the draw for this band. That dude's just a whack job. But, I mean, it's a cool album. That was their debut. And then their, I think, second album, Elysium Encounter. Killer cover, gatefold cover. And just as good as the first one. Three-piece, just going at it, man. And those were 1974 and 1975. Next up, a legendary kind of band. Another one of those cactus kind of bands, bang kind of bands. You'll see this band's name pop up all the time when you're searching for this kind of stuff. And that's Buffalo. Australian band, Volcanic Rock. This was their second album, I think. Very cool album, and this is the one everybody talks about, the one everybody, or the one you'll be pointed towards the most. And this is an Karma reissue, and this was 1973. Killer, just 70s hard rock. But for my money, their next album, which would have been their third album from 74, is Only Want You For Your Money. Excuse me. And this smokes. This blows Volcanic Rock away, I think. And I'm surprised this doesn't get talked about more. And again, this is a Karma pressing. But this is just a straight up killer hard rock record, man. I kind of suggest if you're going to check out Buffalo, if you can track this one down, I would start with this one. Alright, next up, another big name in this scene is Captain Beyond. And here's an original with the hologram cover. This is 1972. U.S. band. I think they were from California, I believe. But right off the bat, man, you drop the needle and it starts with Dancing Madly Backwards. Just look that up on YouTube if you've never heard that track. Just killer band, killer album. And this is kind of what this whole scene was about, albums like this. That was their debut, and then Sufficiently Breathless was their second album in 1973, and I like this one too. And then their third album, which of course I can't remember the title of right now. Not quite as good, but And then we have Bull Angus, 1971, band out of New York State. Bluesy, maybe touches of psych, heavy. This is an original Mercury. Just a killer record. Alright, next we have Iron Claw. And this is on that vintage label, which is basically Rockadrome Monster. These guys were from Scotland. And this is basically recordings from 70 to 74. I don't believe they actually had an actual album released. These were all found later and put out. It's okay, kind of raw, very fuzzy, Sabbath kind of stuff. They were definitely a big Sabbath band, or they like Sabbath, put it that way. Next, got this not long ago. I was very happy to get this on vinyl. An official reissue of Irish Coffee. From Denmark, or Belgium, 1970. And organ, a little bit of a deep purple kind of thing. I actually got turned on to these guys a long time ago. I was on a message board, a metal message board, and they just got talking about 70s hard rock. And somebody mentioned this band and a place where you could download it. So I've had this on a burn forever. I was really happy to get it on vinyl. Next, Indian Summer. This is an Karma pressing. This is 1971. They were British. It's kind of prog sounding. Reading about this band, kind of interesting. I think it was Vertigo came to see the band, and they were playing with Black Sabbath. The label ended up signing Sabbath, but they had come to see Indian Summer to sign them, and Indian Summer basically got beat out by Sabbath, I guess. But interesting album. Nothing to knock your socks off it. Kind of cool. Next, from Iceland, Ice Cross. This is 1973. Heavy prog kind of sounding. And I believe, yeah, this is also on vintage Rockadrome Monster thing. Pretty cool. Next we have Human Beast Volume 1. And this was their only album, Volume 1. 1970. A lot of wah used for the guitar. Kind of a cream sound. And definitely, that kind of 60s a little bit, still definitely stuck in here. Like say 1970. Next, this band's from DC, kind of around my area. Hillo Hammett, 1969. Again, kind of a cream, heavy psych kind of feel to them. Reissued, of course. I'd never heard of them, just kind of came across them online. It was relatively cheap, so I grabbed it. That's really cool. Head Over Heels. These guys were from Michigan. Heavy blues. What was this? 71. 3-piece. And again, this is another cheap reissue. This was, I think I've got this for like 11 or 12 bucks online. Very cool. This I showed not too long ago. Hackensack, Up the Hard Way. It's like 74, is that right? 74, UK band. The singer is Nicky Moore. He went on to sing with a band called Tagger, and then he replaced Bruce Dickinson in Samson. So kind of a new wave British heavy metal connection to this band. Cool stuff about, I remember like half this album was really good, and half of it kind of meandered around. But it was a cool pickup. Definitely glad to have it in the collection. Alright, next, I kind of been looking for this for a while and finally found a copy. Fuzzy Duck. Killer album. This is from 71. Yeah, 1971. UK band. Kind of prog. Heavy prog. Psych, kind of. I don't know. But just a really good guitar-driven album. Yeah, totally dig this band. One of my favorites. Found this online, ended up picking it up. Freedom Through the Years. UK band. It's 1971, and this is just heavy blues, man. It's freaking really good. Love this album, and it was about after I got that, about a month later, couldn't believe, in a shop I came across an original pressing. There's the inner, but definitely worth checking out. Just good heavy blues. And in that same shop I found another one of their albums, Freedom at Last. Cool, not as good as the other album, Through the Years. Holy crap, Through the Years. But still cool. Happy to have that. One I'm still trying to get my head around, and you see this one all the time too. It's talked about. It's kind of a legendary underground album, I guess. Flower Traveling Band, and it's called Satori. And Japanese heavy psych band, I guess. What was this year? 1972. Some of that Asian influence in the sound. Definitely interesting, but for as much as I see it talked about online and all that, it just didn't blow me away. But I definitely need to spin this some more. It definitely has my attention. I need to get back to it. This is kind of weird. Canadian band, Fable. Get the L out of here. And this was mid-70s, 1975. Hard rock. It's basically unreleased stuff. Some label found all these recordings from this band. It's a 2 LP set, but actually it's only 3 sides. Side 4 is blank. And I assume it's all the recordings they found by this band. And like I say, just kind of hard rock. I don't know, kind of different. Definitely check them out. And full-blown classic. I'm sure everybody knows these 2 albums. Dust, Heart Attack. This is 1972, the second album. And of course, 3-piece out of New York. Mark Bell is the drummer. He was going to be the drummer with Richard Hell and the Voidoids, and then to the Ramones, where he basically is most well known. And then their debut on Karma Sutra. Both albums, and both these are originals. Also have represses. They're out there. They're easy to find. Check them out. Pick them up, man. Both albums are killer 70s hard rock. 71, 72, those come out. Alright, another one I've had a burn of for a long time. I was super happy to find this on vinyl. Demian. And this was a couple guys from Bubble Puppy out of Texas. You know, they had a psych hit or whatever in the 60s. This is 1970s, or 1970. It's just good rock, good hard rock. Yeah, definitely worth checking out. Next up, Damnation of Adam Blessing. This is second Damnation, their second album. I'm still looking for their first one, but eventually it'll turn up. 1970s, these guys were from Cleveland, and just kind of hard rock, you know, very good stuff. Like I said, still looking for that first album. Hopefully it'll show up at some point. Next, and actually I'm going to take a break here. This is getting like mega long. Anybody still out there watching? But showed the CD, and it's Coven. Witchcraft destroys minds and reaps souls. And this is a Karma pressing. I would love to find an original. I actually came across an original long ago. Pretty much kind of beat up, $50, and I'll take the reissue for 20 something. I've talked about this album before, man. I just got drawn into this thing, and it keeps drawing me back. I keep pulling it out every so often and listening to it. It's just a weird, freaking album, but very cool. Great vocals. If you're into The Oath, he was singer went on, now is in Lucifer. She's very much, you know, I think inspired by Jinx, the singer here for Coven. Just great stuff. Definitely check it out. Very dark album. Alright, like I said, I'm gonna take a break. We'll be right back. Okay, so dug out some more records and we'll keep on going. About halfway, I guess. This is going to be an epic, stupid long video, so who gives a crap? I'm going to go for it. What's playing now? Switch the record out. We have the JPT Scary Band. JPT Scare Band, sorry. This US band, early 70s, did a lot of recording, basement recording, that kind of thing. Never released anything. Into the 90s, I guess Monster Records kind of got a hold of the material and put this out. The band actually kind of reformed and still putting out records. I think they're on Ripple Music now, that label, Ripple Records, whatever it is. But cool band, kind of acid rock, long guitar jams, just cool album. I was super happy to find that pressing on Monster on vinyl. So, but it's playing now. And then we have huge thanks to Garner, the Rock and Roll Truck Stop, who's another VC member, steeped in this 70s hard rock thing, man. Definitely check him out. He makes videos kind of in spurts. He'll make a bunch and he won't make some for a while, then he'll make a bunch. Great VC guy, great guy. But anyways, he turned me on to this. He showed it in a video, Parish Hall. And I told him, honestly, if I'd seen that in a record store, I would have totally passed over that, because this just looks like a John Travolta looking album or something to me. But it's totally not. Killer heavy blues. It's a San Francisco band. Look here, 1970. Power Trio. One record, and this was it. They were done. But killer album. I'd love to find an original. This is Anakarma reissue. But happy with that. Next up we have Odin. 1971 from the UK. Also a Karma reissue. This was originally released on Vertigo. And there we go again with Vertigo. Also hard rock, but elements of prog in there, that kind of thing. Cool album. This is kind of newer too. I've had this maybe a month or so. Okay, Totally Weird album. Actually kind of came out in 85, but had their roots going back to the 70s, early 80s, 70s. But it was just odd, so I kind of picked it up. Northern Haze is the name of the band. Inuit Indians, is that correct? Eskimos out of Canada, and just living way up there in a little fishing village. Young guys, into late 60s and 70s hard rock, Hendrix and that kind of thing. Started playing music, played around the region, recorded some stuff, and actually this album was recorded, most of this album was recorded for the Canadian Broadcasting Company as a library album, so it was only issued to the libraries. Somebody digging years later found it. It's been reissued, and it's definitely out there. It's very cool stuff on here and some kind of weird stuff, but strange and cool. It comes with like a booklet. Got some drawings by one of the band members, I think. But very interesting. Alright, next up, out of Texas, Nitzinger. Killer guitar player. This is the second album, Live Better Electrically. This is 1976. And like I said, they're out of Texas. John Nitzinger, I think was his name. Yep. Guitar player. He wrote a lot with Blood Rock. Wrote a lot of the songs on the Blood Rock albums. He ended up getting signed to Capitol, I think it was. I can't remember. I don't think this is 20th Century. Yep, Capitol is the other album. Off the fact, you know, his songwriting with Blood Rock. Put this band together, and here's the debut. Much better than the other album. And this is cool. It's kind of like a Tolex cover, like a guitar amp cover. And I found this sealed years ago. I've had this for a long time. And actually, that's another thing. A lot of this stuff I kind of meant to mention. As I got into this 70s hard rock thing, as I was picking up reissues, and I got to the point where I wanted to put a section together of 70s obscure hard rock. So I went back through the collection, pulled a bunch out. I still got more to pull out, like the Cactus I haven't pulled out and put in this into the obscure 70s hard rock section yet. But so that's kind of how this has grown. A lot of this stuff like this I've had for years, but I just had it in the rock section. So like I said, I've really went crazy over the last 5 years checking out this stuff and picking up reissues, but it's not like I've bought everything I'm showing here in the last 5 years or something. A lot of this stuff, for example this, I've had for years and years. Like the Cactus stuff I've had for years. But anyways, very cool album, especially this one. Good guitar player. Alright, next is Night Sun. Early 70s from Germany. It's just good hard rock. This is a reissue, of course. I remember liking this. Like, I can't really say anything else sound-wise. Just hard rock. You know, maybe a touch of prog. Very cool. All right, next, out of Canada, Neil Merriweather. This was his second album, kind of in this 2-album set. He actually started in the 60s, did a ton of stuff. Played with a lot of people, or wrote for a lot of people, whatever. This is Kryptonite, and here's a picture of the band on the back. This is the second album, come out in 1975, and it's heavy, definitely, and it's got like a glam side to it, which you can kind of see on the back. Maybe think, I don't know, the weirdness of, the glamminess of Cooper, if you could call it that, Alice Cooper. And then the first one out of these 2 albums, Space Ranger. Definitely cool albums. Definitely worth checking out. Alright, then the second album from May Blitz, the 2nd of May. And this is 1971. UK, kind of proggy, heavy prog, I guess. This album's okay. I didn't like it as much, and this is a reissue on a Karma. I didn't like it as much as the first one, which you can actually look at that way. This is much heavier. Originally came out on Vertigo, and this one came out in 1970. Cool band. especially this album. The 2nd of May is good, but this album, the self-titled debut, is the one. Right, next, from Australia, Masters Apprentice. And this is the A Toast to Panama Red. 1972, and definitely heavy prog here. Reissue. This is on red vinyl. This was reissued in 2013. Like I said, originally came out in 1972. And this was just a weird find. I found for like a couple bucks. I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. Main Horse. I think they're Swiss. It's 1971. And there's some connections to Spooky Tooth here and a couple other bands. But very prog, heavy prog, killer organ work on here, keyboards. And this just looked interesting when I came across it in a record shop, like I say, for a couple bucks. And, you know, 1971, so I grabbed it and really ended up digging it. Okay, next up, one of the heavy hitters, the big ones, the one that commands huge money, a few $1,000s for original pressings. I think originals are Vertigo. I've never seen one, never will see one, whatever label it is. But reissue, Leaf Hound, Growers of Mushrooms, and this is on a Karma. It's just killer hard rock. This is one of the top tier of this, and like I say, it just goes for just stupid money original pressings. So highly recommended. Come across it for a good price, reissue. Pick it up, give it a shot, or check it out online. Very cool band. They were British, and like I say, 1970. And if you go searching for obscure 70s hard rock, this is going to pop up for sure. One of the ones, you know, early on I checked out. Next, from Syracuse, New York, Jukin' Bone. This is Whiskey Woman. They put out 2 albums, both of them in 1972, it looks like. And just kind of straight hard rock, maybe a touch, a little bit of boogie in there, I don't know. But just a solid listen, both albums. This is Whiskey Woman, and actually I probably like the debut a little better. Way Down East. And come out on RCA. And this is another deal, you know, I picked up for a couple bucks somewhere and ended up really liking it and started hunting for the second one. Yeah, I think I found this same deal, a couple bucks somewhere. Just good stuff, man. And like I said, I think they're both 1972. Another Texas band. Is it Josephus, I think is how you say it. And it's just good hard rock, man. Bluesy kind of hard rock. This is a reissue. There's a few other things out there. They had an album before this that was more 60s. Well, actually, this is 1970, so the album before was like 68, 69, something like that. Definitely more psych, more 60s. This is much better, I think. Definitely dig this album. And another kind of big album you'll see talked about a lot when you start researching this stuff is the one album from Jerusalem. 1972 UK hard rock. Full on, and this is come out on Deerham originally, but Monster Records reissued it. Ian Gillan produced this album. Put out this one album and fell apart. 3-piece power trio. Drummer and bass player ended up getting another band together, but didn't call it Jerusalem. They called it Pussy, and I showed that CD not long ago. Very cool CD, but very different from this album. But definitely worth checking out. Okay, how's everybody doing? We all hanging in there? This is like a epic video. Okay, keep it rolling. Next up we have Sorcery, Sinister Soldiers. This is like 78, band out of Chicago. Played around Chicago, basically recorded their own album, private pressed, and sold it at their shows. It was, I believe, the only way to get it. Ultra rare. Luckily we have some reissues now. This is 78. We're getting later into the 70s, and this is definitely like a proto-metal. You can hear the metal coming in. Very hard rock. To me, I almost think a little Manila Road. You know what I mean? They kind of would fit in with Manila Road later on. That kind of thing. There was also a band called Sorcery out of California. They had an album called Stunt Rock. Two different bands. This band was from the Chicago area. Alright, next up, Irish band, Skid Row, and this is their album 34 Hours. And 34 hours was how long it took them to record it. No, this isn't the Skid Row we all know and love with Sebastian Bach. This is the Skid Row with Gary Moore, before his stint with Thin Lizzy. This album was 1971. Power trio. Phil Lynott was originally in Skid Row, I believe, and was basically let go when they were signed, and he went on, you know, to form Thin Lizzy. Gary Moore would later be in Thin Lizzy also. That was their second album, and from 1970, this was their first self-titled, and this is an original on Epic. This was a reissue. Both very good. Hard rock, bluesy kind of hard rock. Just good album. Couldn't believe came across this. Pretty cheap. Next, another legendary band in this whole scene out of New York City. And here's their second album, Sir Lord Baltimore, self-titled. Good album. This one's from 1971. 70s hard rock. Dust, Sir Lord Baltimore, coming out of New York. Just crazy good bands. Good album, but I prefer their first album, which is Kingdom Come. Correct? I'm getting tired. Yep, Kingdom Come from 1970. And you'll see this album everywhere if you go investigating or researching this stuff online. Great album. Again, another reissue, and these are cheap. These are both reissues. I haven't seen it for a while, but I've seen them around for like $12, $13. Gatefolds, so worth it, man. You know, come across them, pick them up. And I was lucky enough to find an original on Mercury. Known about Sir Lord Baltimore for a long time, since the 90s, I guess. The guy I work with, older, he's in his 60s now, so he definitely grew up late 60s and all through the 70s. You know, he saw Zeppelin, all these bands, and this is his era. So he kind of turns me on to some of this stuff. And back in the 90s, he turned me on to Sir Lord Baltimore. He had a CD that had both albums on it. Next is Silver Meter. Lee Stevens from Blue Cheer, after he left Blue Cheer, formed this band. One album and done. What was the year? 1970. Cool. It's got some covers on it. It's not a completely solid album, but still a cool album. Worth checking out. I found this for, I don't know, $10 or so, a couple years back. I was pretty happy with that. This just came out like last year. Another one of those unreleased material was found, you know, and somebody put it out. It's Shotgun. It's called Delassian Rock. That's how you say it. This come on Shroom Angel, which Shroom Angel is a newer label out of Texas that specializes in this reissue of Texas hard rock. forgotten stuff from the 70s. And this was limited to 500. But killer. And like I said, it was unreleased. The recordings are from around 1976. Just good hard rock, man. I could totally see this band being on the radio. They're not full-blown commercial, but they have commercial leanings, and they're very good. It's kind of a shame. You hear something like this, and it's like, what happened, man? Why didn't they make the jump? At least get up there, you know, to a B-level band, you know, touring with bigger bands and being on the radio and that kind of thing. But very good album. And how these labels find this stuff is just crazy. Okay, next, this was a Private Press album from 1972. I think this band was out of Virginia, if I remember correct. Short Cross, Arising. Kind of heavy blues rock, you know. And this one I probably picked up a year or two ago, whenever it got reissued. You know, I'm kind of around the Virginia area. I would love to stumble onto an original of this. How freaking cool. But really good stuff. Alright, next, St. Anthony's Fire. This is a New Jersey band, 1970. Kind of hard psych, acid rock a little bit. Originally come out on Zonk. This is a reissue, right down to the label and everything. Vintage Records put it out. Rockadrome Monster. Just good stuff, man. Next, a really good album, man. Road. Another band, One and Done. This came out in 1972. Power trio, featured Noel Redding from Jimi Hendrix, and he went on to do Fat Mattress, and then this album, Road. Reissue, of course. It's just killer, heavy, bluesy 70s hard rock. Alright, next, an album that just completely kicked my ass when I got it. Love this album. A reissue. It was actually offered an original by a VC member, but had to pass because they're crazy expensive, like most of the original pressings of this stuff. But it was cool to say I passed on an original. But it's Primeval, Smoking Bats at Campton's. This band was from Indiana, and this album came out in 74, I'm sorry. And just hard rock. Just a solid album. Great band. And again, another one of those albums that makes you, when you hear it, you just like shake your head and like, what happened? Why didn't this band do something? But, a couple more in this stack. Kind of another legendary band out of Cleveland, Ohio. Poobah, US Rock. This is the new reissue. It just came out last year, I believe. Like I said, legendary hard rock band, 70s hard rock. This album was 76. Yep, 1976. Killer guitar player, Gustafson, I think's his name. And all their stuff, man, from the 70s just goes for stupid money. But yeah, I was happy to get the a nice fresh reissue. But I came across this, man, back in the 90s, and I'll just say $5, but I knew I paid less than $5 for this thing. And it's not in the greatest shape, but it's my copy. I found it digging, which is an original of US Rock. Just killer hard rock, man. These guys would actually play around this area. I've talked to people a little older than me that remember seeing them like at little colleges around here. They played, you know, made a pretty big path, I guess, around the Midwest and out east. And actually, at one point, they were based in Pennsylvania. I talked to a guy that owned the record shop, that still owns a record shop, and said one of the members later on was from Pennsylvania. They kind of moved there for just a little bit, played around there a lot, and then went back to Cleveland. I guess it didn't work out or whatever. Like I said, this has a little bit of water damage, a little bit of mold on it. I don't give a crap. At the time when I picked this up, it meant nothing to me, and I had it for years until it clicked all of a sudden what it was, and I started listening to it. It took a while, but I got there. Just killer band. These go for stupid money. Like I said, I really wish they'd reissue Steamroller at some point. Albums go for hundreds of dollars, originals. And then there's a reissue of the first one, Let Me In. Just same deal. Just killer. I think this was on Ripple. Yeah, Ripple Music. Just Jim Gustafson is basically the band. He's the main guy, guitar player. And Poobah's still going, man. I mean, he's still going. He puts albums out occasionally, and I don't even know how many they have out now. They play at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame occasionally, when they have something going on there. So, yeah, they're kind of ingrained in the Cleveland hard rock scene, I guess. Okay, we're down to our last stack. Just, if anybody's left watching this video. Alright, Warhorse, Red Sea, UK, 1972. This was their second album. Both albums come out on Vertigo. This album's good. I don't like it as much as the first album, the first self-titled. I mean, like I mentioned before, there's a drum solo on here, just a long track with a bunch of drum work, and it's like, come on, man, you're wasting vinyl. But cool reissue. And then their first album, very good album, kind of heavy blues, little prog, I guess you could say, kind of thrown in. Here's the insert with the band. You can see Vertigo Records there. So like I say, reissue, killer album. Really, really, really dig this album. Another kind of legendary band, basically, I guess, kind of since Monster got a hold of them and reissued stuff. And this is their live album, Truth and Janie Erupts. This was recorded live 1976. They were a power trio from Iowa, and just kind of straight ahead hard rock. I don't know, maybe a little bit of psych kind of thrown in, but yeah, we're up into 76, and we're getting more towards just straight, plug into your Marshall and crank it up hard rock. And they self-released one album called No Rest for the Wicked, and Monster reissued that. Vintage Monster, whatever. Same year, 1976. Just killer cover, killer band. Couple things on the sticker here. One of the greatest hard rock albums of all time. That's from the Acid Archives. And this is an essential must-get release for fans of 70s hard rock from Roadburn. I was beyond happy to get a copy of this reissue last year, year before. Had it on CD for a long time, but I actually had a burn on CD, I believe. Alright, next, Truck. I think these guys were from Oklahoma. This album came out like in 1970, somewhere around right there. Just cool hard rock, a little bit of psych kind of thrown in, but very cool. And this is a reissue. I picked up the reissue because I found an original a long time ago, and what's this, $13.99 on it. I know I didn't pay that. It was probably $3 or $4 somewhere, but it wasn't in the greatest of shape. So when the reissue came out, which was a cheap reissue at the time, it's probably still floating around, like one of those $11, $12 reissues. I grabbed it. Like I said, just a cool band, good hard rock. Next, kind of in that legendary area, which would be Trapeze. You Are the Music, We're Just the Band. Great album. This band was is kind of known because of Glenn Hughes came from this band. Left here, joined Deep Purple, and then played with a million people after that. But this is an original, really cool band. This album was 72. Yep, 72. They were from England. And then kind of the big album everybody talks about is Trapeze. This was 1970. Again, Glenn Hughes. There's an album before this, good album. This is probably their best album. After the next album, Glenn Hughes would leave, and they would continue to put out a few more albums, just nowhere on the level of these two. Alright, next, Swiss band, Toad. Just cool, heavy, bluesy, hard rock. The guitarist was Vic Verget, I think that's how you say his name. This album came out in 1971, and this is in a Karma reissue that has some bonus stuff, 2 LP set. Just smoking album, really good stuff. And they also just put this out not long ago. It's a live show called Open Fire from 1972. You can see 3-piece power trio, just smoking live album. Alright, next up from Germany. This is their second album. We're the Tiger Bunch, and that's Tiger B. Smith. This is 1972, German hard rock. You know, this stuff's starting to appear there with Scorpions, you know, that kind of thing. It's just really crazy ass band with the image. And here was, I believe their second album. This may have been the third. I don't have the very first one. I think this was the second, Tiger Rock. And Tiger Rock was 1972. Tiger Bunch was 1974. Very cool stuff. Originally, I think, came out on Vertigo. Okay, we're almost done. This band here, completely dig the crap out of this band. Killer guitar player, Adrian Gerbitz. That's a 3-man army. And this is their third album that was entitled 2. Kind of doesn't make much sense. But this came out in 1974. These guys were British, and it had Adrian Gerbitz and Paul Gerbitz. Adrian's brother played bass. And the Baker Gerbitz Army showed earlier. That's where the Gerbitz from that band came from. 3-man army, who originally came from a band called Gun. But just this album smokes, killer album. And this was their second album, self-titled, came out in 1973, and this is an original. This is also an original. And then their first album, A Third of a Lifetime, and this is a reissue. Just good stuff. All 3 albums are, you know, totally good albums, totally good band. Very much worth checking out. And the last one, 1973, Stray Dog, out of Texas. They kind of went to, I guess, London before, you know, they ended up recording this album with one of these from ELP, I think. And this is an original. Here's the insert and everything. Just smoking album, heavy bluesy kind of stuff. Just a good band, really good band. Whew, and that's it. And like I said, there's more I could pull out. You know, like, I don't know, Juicy Lucy, and just all kind of little odd things within the main collection. But these are the ones I've pulled out so far and put together into the into this section, and it's ever growing. And I'm totally digging this stuff, and I hope everybody enjoyed this. If you're interested in this kind of music, and the main reason I did it is just some information for some albums to maybe look for, maybe jot down some, you know, check them out online, track them down if you can, because it's kind of the Wild West when you get into this stuff, and it can kind of be easy to be led astray. You know, every time a reissue of one of these old albums come out, it's, you know, the greatest things in sliced bread, and they sound exactly like Zeppelin or exactly like Deep Purple. You get it home and it doesn't, or you check it out online and it doesn't. So definitely do your research, and hopefully this helps a little bit. All right, one quick little section here at the end. I just want to show a couple newer bands that are active today and are heavily influenced by the 70s hard rock sound. They don't sound exactly like all these bands, you know, from the 70s, but you know, they're building on that template, and you know, some really cool bands. So let's take a look at some of those now. Alright, so we're up to new bands that have a 70s vibe to them, 70s hard rock vibe. I'm not going to go into depth here. I'm just going to show these records, mention the bands. I'm not going to show everything by the bands, but if you dig the 70s hard rock sound, those older bands, these bands are very much worth checking out, I believe, and you know, give them a shot. It's a good time right now. There's a big scene for this. It may be waning just a little bit right now, but still some cool bands out there. So let's kind of jump into it. Blues Pills, definitely killer band, female singer, Janis Joplin-y kind of thing. Yeah, very cool. Blood of the Sun, Deep Purple, heavy Hammond B3 sound and organ, just killer band. They have a bunch of albums out. This is probably my favorite one, Burning on the Wings of Desire. I'm getting burned out. This video is killing me. A little bit of a local band, I believe, Beazle Fuzz. I believe this was on Church Within. Yeah, killer, heavy bluesy, a little bit of psych in there. Just amazing. You can check them out. They have a couple videos on YouTube. They're already done. Broke up. There's a new band formed out of a few of the members, I believe. Band that's got a good bit of press, and rightly so. A very cool band, Admiral Sir Cloudsley Shovel. Hard rock, kind of gritty, just good. Cool band. That was their second album. Here was their first album. Yeah, give them a shot. Another band got a lot of press. This was their first album, Graveyard. Not a huge fan of this band. Really, really, really like this album. And every album after that is okay. But this one, definitely my favorite. This was their first album. And it's out there, easy to get. Kind of a weird entry here, Glitter Wizard. This was their second album. First album, a little psych hard rock kind of. This one, a little metal hard rock almost. Very cool. One of my favorites here, heavy psych, hard rock. It's Person. Love this band. Incredible singer, great songs. Videos are just trippy and fantastic. Check them out. Person. Another band, one album and done. Singer's already moved on to a band called Lucifer, and that's The Oath. Kind of that occult rock, what they call today, occult rock or whatever, but I put them in there with Coven. If you dig Coven, you'll probably dig this. It has that satanic overtones, whatever, darkness to it. Very cool. Good hard rock stuff. Love this album, Mount Carmel, Real Women. They have a few albums out. I found this one to be my favorite. Just cranked up amps and screaming guitars, 70s hard rock vibe. Just killer. Another band that got a lot of attention for a while, Cadaver. Again, just 70s sounding kind of hard rock. That was their second album and then their first album. And they also have a live album. And one more, kind of in the stoner vein, but if you are a Sabbath fan, get this album. One of the best albums for a long time for me, and that's Orchid Capricorn. And we're ending on a high note here. This album is just unbelievable. If you're, like I said, if you're a Sabbath fan, it doesn't get any better than this. They got this is the first album. Second album was Mouse of Madness. Very good album too, but this smokes it. This is the real deal. Hopefully their next album will kind of get a little bit more back to Capricorn. Thing with their second album, production was a little muddy, but it was still a good album. And that's it. I have no idea what this is going to clock in at after I get it all edited together. So this should be funny. See if anybody actually watches this whole thing. So we'll see what happens. Please, anybody have a comment? You know, if you don't agree with me, leave a comment. Be nice. You know, like I said, I'm not in any way an expert. This is just stuff I'm really digging, man, and enjoying finding this stuff. So, any suggestions? Let me know. Somebody's here. I gotta go. Later, BC.